Hello, everyone. I'm Hannah.
And I'm Emily.
And we're the hosts of the I Don't Think So podcast, where we decide if we think a conspiracy theory is believable or if we really don't think so.
Yeah, we are affiliated with the Flurry Sports podcast and Flurry Sports in general. So if you like our podcast, please go and check them out. There's the Flurry Sports podcast with our older brothers, Jake and Zach, as well as multiple other podcasts that you can find if that's not to your liking. If you like what you hear, go ahead and give us a like, a share, and go ahead and follow us on Twitter at I Don't Think So _EH. We are working on getting better at posting. So go ahead and give us a follow so you can go ahead and see every time we post.
Yeah, and we are now should be on pretty much any streaming platform of your choosing. I'm an Apple Podcast gal, so it was very nice to be able to be on there, but we're on Spotify. I don't know what the other ones are.
For sure those two.
We made it to 2. Does Amazon?
Ooh. Probably.
I don't know. Listen on Apple or Spotify.
Listen on Apple or Spotify. That's where we listen. So.
Yeah. Well, we are up to episode 4.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so Emily and I have been kind of doing this whole trade-off thing for coming up with conspiracy theories. And so I have prepared one for today. And I was mentioning to Emily that, you know, we've gotten comments that we usually agree. We are very similar. Mm-hmm. We usually can convince each other of pretty much anything.
Sometimes we share a brain. It's all right.
A brain cell.
One brain
Just
cell.
one. Yeah. So I decided to try to push the limit a little bit today and get into a conspiracy that I'm not even sure if I've convinced myself of, but I did find it quite interesting. So to start, our first part is, are vampires real? So Emily, what do you know about vampires?
Beyond Twilight, not a ton. I think of them with Transylvania. You know, they aren't really alive. They're I think they're dead, and they suck blood out of people, and they some of them turn into bats. Not the ones in Twilight. They just are really fast.
Run really fast. Yeah, so my love of vampires started with Twilight. I am a Twilight galley as well. Apple Podcast,
Woo!
Twilight, we got both. Team Jacob, though. Let's be real. Actually, honestly, book, Team Edward. Movie, Team Jacob.
Never read the books. Watched the movies way past the hype because I was too cool for school to watch them when they were
coming out.
So I watched them 10 years after they came out, and I wanted to talk to somebody about them, and no one was willing to talk to me about them.
You didn't reach out to me?
I probably did, but you were like, why are you watching them now? And I was like,
you can talk to me about Twilight any day. Is it a Twilight podcast?
It is now. Welcome to the I Don't Think So Twilight edition.
Oh my god. Or do you ever watch or listen to the rewatch podcasts? Just rewatch Twilight podcast. Anyway, not what we're talking about. Do you know any, I guess, traditional folklore about vampires? Some of their features, or how to keep them away, or anything like that?
Yeah, I feel like I remember, the old, they don't like garlic. They don't like the sunlight. You have to invite them into your home. They can't just stroll on in.
Mm-hmm.
They can't see themselves in mirrors, or they don't have a reflection. They're pale. Ditto.
Me.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, for sure. So, yeah, that's kind of what I think nowadays, like as I started to research some stuff, I think some of the folklore got kind of brushed under the rug because what was interesting about Twilight is that it didn't follow some of those traditional beliefs about how we saw vampires and things like that. And so again, how they would say as like modern day vampires, which would be like in the last 500 years, would be would be like they have fangs, they drink human blood, they can't see themselves in mirrors. They can be warded off with garlic, or they could be killed with a stake through the heart.
Oh yeah.
And so and then one of the most famous ones being Dracula.
Yeah. I couldn't think of his name. I kept thinking Vlad, and I was like, that's not it.
Your reference. You leading me in. You're leading me in. So, and then also that a lot of times vampires were kind of seen as like the aristocrats of society, living in castles, accumulating a lot of wealth because they're killing people and can take their money, and then living immortally so they can kind of just continue to get more and more money. So,
wouldn't it be disappointing to be like immortal and be poor?
I know.
You struggle forever.
Right? So one of the most famous vampires is Dracula, and that's based off of Bram Stoker's book. And he reportedly modeled this off of a Romanian prince, Vlad Tepes. Ooh. See, that's where your Vlad's probably coming from.
I knew it. I knew there's a Vlad.
Yeah, and so then he was more popularly known as Vlad the Impaler.
I feel like I've heard that before, but not 100% sure. Also, sounds like a fun guy.
Yeah. No, so he is like famously known for like they came
impaling people.
Right. So there was like this war, and supposedly they came to this field, and there's like hundreds of people that were killed by being like impaled through the heart. So supposedly he was like trying to fight off vampires. Okay. And while he was doing this, he would have gotten bitten and then become a vampire. So the idea is that you would become a vampire by them biting you, but not completely sucking out your blood, because otherwise they'd kill you. And then that would be how you would then become a vampire.
Food for thought. Would you say vampires eat you?
Suck your blood?
Or does that have to be like take a
That's
little
more cannibalism?
Okay. Just checking. I was like, they eat you, and then I was like, I don't think they eat you.
No,
but they kind of eat
your
you.
Blood. Drink you.
Slurp.
It's gonna do slurp too. You. Okay. But yeah, so he is kind of seen as one of the most like famous vampires because of this book, and that was also based in Transylvania, right?
Yes.
Okay. So that's kind of where that would all come from. So what's interesting though is that a lot of like what is seen as vampire characteristics, and this is where I think a lot of this stuff changed because of like more recent pop culture with Twilight, where a lot of research will say like there's no like set characteristics a vampire has to have to be a vampire. Meaning like what's interesting is that we see references of vampirism throughout history, throughout many cultures. So like it's depicted in different hieroglyphics, it's depicted in drawings in Egypt, but then it's depicted like with the Mayans, like all the way across the world. We're seeing different references of vampirism. However, there was also different like medical treatments at times of like people drinking blood,
Mm-hmm.
thinking that would contribute to different health benefits and things like that. And so it's like kind of a balance of like, were they considered vampires or were they just doing this to try to like seek medical treatment, and where that border is. And that's why I think there's a lot of like there's a lot of debate of like what would be considered a vampiric characteristic or not. So they're saying like we should try to set some parameters of like them being immortal, them doing those types of things versus just someone who drinks blood. Because we also have like creepy serial killers that like get off and like eating people and drinking their blood, but that doesn't make them a vampire, you know? I was like, ooh, spooky episode to get us into starting spooky season.
Spooky season is all seasons. I'm so excited.
Mm-hmm. And so, beyond just like, oh, are vampires real? I wanted to give you a real life example currently of someone who has been reportedly come out's not the right word. He did not come out as a vampire.
Wild.
People are trying to identify him as a vampire.
Okay.
Now, I stumbled across this conspiracy theory after the passing of Queen Elizabeth.
Yes.
On the 8th, right? September 8th, right?
Yeah.
And so, not her. She's not a vampire because she's not immortal, obviously.
I was like, she died.
However, supposedly, now King Charles is a vampire. And I have some evidence.
Okay.
To try to persuade you as to why he might be a vampire.
Okay.
So to start,
because the man looks 100.
Yes. So at the time when I was first reading this one article, there's a few different things as to why people think he's a vampire. To start, he has come out and saying that he has a disease called porphyria. Now, you're in the medical field. Do you know what porphyria is?
I've heard it before.
I had to Google it. So
I'm not sure.
It's a disease that causes iron deficiency. Okay. And it causes, like, so there's different types of porphyria, and the kind that he would have would be genetic. Meaning that it's been passed along from his family, and it causes different symptoms. So one of these symptoms with the type of porphyria that he has causes you to be very sensitive to sunlight. And he a lot of times will have to be covered up. Now, supposedly he has this porphyria that causes him to be sensitive to sunlight because it causes burns within his skin.
Okay.
Which, as you might know, is also, I was going to say a symptom, but not a symptom. A
symptom of being a vampire.
So, people are saying, you know, what he could do to try to treat some of his iron deficiency is to drink others' blood. Okay? Now, might not be the most, I don't know how to say, like, not successful, but one of the most, like, effective's the word I was trying to say, effective ways of treating his porphyria or vampirism, but it could work. Now, that a little weird, not sure how I feel about that, but did you know that King Charles is actually a descendant of Vlad Tepes?
I did not.
Yeah. So, he would be So the royal families has links to several countries across Europe, obviously, including Romania. And as it turns out, he is a descendant of what we see as this real life Dracula. Okay. And he still owns and is in control of several properties within Transylvania. That was originally part of Vlad the Impaler's own thing. So he kind of took it over, and he was the heir to Vlad.
King Charles was? Or yes,
Mm-hmm.
King Charles?
Yeah.
Vlad's
Okay.
that young?
No, but so that was like in the 1460s, and it's since been passed on until now. He has become heir to it.
Got it.
Did I explain that correctly?
Yes.
So Vlad, who is seen as Dracula, lived in the 15th century. Okay.
Mhm.
And so this is kind of like, so he
would be like King Charles' great grandfather.
Correct. Yeah,
Got
thank you for explaining that. So he was ruler during the 15th century, living there, and King Charles actually supposedly didn't find out about his links to the Romanian ruler until the 90s. So it says that he would be his great grandson 16 times removed. So
Quite a ways.
He is a ways out. Now, this is where I was like, I don't know how much I believe this conspiracy theory. There is some very like odd connections here, but there's just been so many different like myths and folklore following this. I just wanted to see if there was like a better explanation that we could give instead of vampires being real. So, I did a little research and kind of followed different histories throughout the world. And this is where I kind of started to see different examples of this that we can find, like I said, in like different Egyptian paintings and Mayans. And there's also things in China where they're saying like vampires in China. Like one of the myths was that if a vampire encountered a bag of rice, it would be compelled to count every grain. And then there's another one where like vampires in South America and India were seen having to like count poppy seeds and things like that. So everything was kind of led back to different like math things, which I thought was kind of interesting that we were seeing these different stories line up even when it was all around the world. Now, we have obviously a lot more knowledge of different like medical experiences and things that we can help us when we're researching. So there are some different reasons as to why we think that people in the past might have believed that these were vampires. So a lot of people think that the original myths of or conspiracies of vampires actually started just because people didn't understand how like dead bodies decompose. So like how when the corpse's skin shrinks and it just makes them have like more of a deathly appearance if their bodies were still to be out in the elements where they're starting to discolor and things like that, which could cause like some darkness under the eyes, things like that. And with it shrinking, if they were to look in their mouth, it could make their like canine teeth look like they had grown longer and then have fangs.
Pointy.
Also, they can start to, with the decomposing and breakdown of internal organs, the like dark purge fluid can leak out of their mouth, making it look like they've been like eating blood or drinking blood, or like things would be flowing out of them. And so we can also connect a lot of times of like serious vampire hysteria of different times that coincide with periods of large deaths. So like plagues, such as the tuberculosis spreading through things, they would like all of a sudden, instead of blaming it on tuberculosis, say, oh, there must be like a vampire that's like killing all these people or sucking all of their blood. It's also been cited with other things like rabies, and that's why when like bats are a common animal to spread rabies, when they're biting people and spreading rabies, that instead of making someone be infected with rabies, they think that they're actually like making them a vampire and things like that. So it's kind of interesting to see, like, they're saying there's also different things where if people could have gone into like different comas or whatever, that they could be rigid or unresponsive for hours or even days with a heartbeat that was undetectable, and then become alive again or become immortal, and then people think that they died and came back to life as a vampire instead of actually just having been alive the whole time. So a way that people would try to protect themselves from these vampires was there are there's like different things that they've dug up where they've seen bodies buried with like bricks in their mouth as a way to try to like stop these people from trying to spread people becoming infected and becoming vampires. So that's kind of what I've collected.
Goodness.
Knowing what we know now, we kind of got to think, are vampires real? And is King Charles a vampire? Or do we not think so?
You know, I don't know if I would lump vampires in with all other cryptids, but I always have questions about a lot of cryptids, because I don't know, I think there's a lot of weird things that go on when you talk about things like Bigfoot or the Loch Ness Monster or insert name here of another cryptid. But I don't know why, but vampires, I've never been able to really lump in with them. I don't know if they're just a different thing in and of themselves or what's going on. But going to King Charles, I'm not shocked that he is related to Vlad the Impaler. Reason being is, you know, for a long time with a lot of royalty across the world, pardon me, it was
like to stay within the family.
Yeah. Genetics, you didn't want, common people to have the same genetics as you, so you might as well marry your sister. Or your cousin, who also happens to rule a country. So am I shocked that he has a iron deficiency disorder? No.
That's genetic.
That's genetic. I'm not shocked. And I'm actually not shocked that the royal family doesn't have more health issues.
Seriously.
Than they do. Good for them. I think it's weird that he's like, I didn't know I was related to Vlad the Impaler until the 90s. Like,
yeah.
You come from like one of the richest families. Like, you can't tell me that your lineage isn't
mapped so you weren't completely documentation. Yeah.
Right. You didn't read it, I guess, until the 90s. Like, sure. Maybe you didn't pay attention. So do I think King Charles is a vampire? Probably not. I don't think so. But I totally understand like where all this came from, because a lot of medical practices now, such as like all the benefits that, after someone births a child, ingesting the placenta is a semi-common practice. I know a lot of people who do it and a lot of people who don't, as well as going back to, I think it's called the vampire treatment. It's something Kim Kardashian did where they like,
don't they like blend it?
They draw blood and then they like put it back in on the face. It's supposed to help with wrinkles. I don't know. Or keep everything very youthful. I don't know.
So
but yes, they like draw your blood. Yeah. They like draw your blood. And then I can't remember if they like needle it into your face or what they do. But But there are those practices, as well as looking back in time. Bloodletting was a huge medical practice, whether people just like cut you open or they stuck leeches to you. So I think back in the day, people really attributed a lot of illnesses relating to the blood, which we know now isn't necessarily true.
And there's actually some interesting stories of when people were suspected of being a vampire.
Mm-hmm.
They would kill them and then burn them at the stake, right? And they would take their ashes and mix them in with a person's blood and then have them drink it to try to make them immune to vampires.
Which
is a little gross to me.
It's very gross. I would be very disappointed if they're like, we're doing this to protect you. You just need to drink this dead person mixed with a little bit of your own blood.
And they would do it to like their own family a lot of times. They're like, you could have been bitten and you didn't know, so we'll just do this so that if you ingest them, then you can't become a vampire like they were.
I'm cool. Let me go.
Right?
Also, what you were saying with the coma thing, it was really common for people to get buried alive. I'm not quite sure what we did that was so revolutionary with a stethoscope, but to me, you didn't feel any pulse.
Right.
And you're like, we're burying them.
How fast were you burying them?
So quickly. You must have buried them so quickly. It was such a common practice that some grave sites were built with a bell above them that like a string went down to the coffin so people could ring the bell if they were, still alive and kicking. Which, the trauma.
That's what I'm saying. I would just die. I would die in there because of the anxiety. The sheer anxiety of being trapped in a grave underground. They're not getting some fluffy coffin. They're in a cardboard or a wooden box underground. I'm dead. If I wasn't dead before, I'm dead now.
I mean, you feel like you're taking a little snooze. You go to sleep in your bed and you wake up and you're just in darkness. Also, my initial thought would not be, I'm buried. I'm under. I'm 6 feet under. I'd be like, I have been kidnapped.
Yeah.
Or I would have thought I was dead. I would have been like, this is the afterlife. This sucks. But
yeah.
I don't know. I just don't think I believe in vampires. I don't think so. What about you?
I don't think so. Yeah, I agree. I thought that this would be fun. I told you it was a little out there.
It is.
But I do find the topic fascinating. So it's still interesting, I think, to like read into folklore. And it always interests me how different folk tales like line up across the world, even though they had like no contact with each other. Like, I find that very fascinating. But yeah, I don't believe in vampires. I totally get where you're coming from with like other things of like the Loch Ness Monster or Bigfoot, where you're like, maybe I could like, you could convince me, but I feel like all of the things that are like more human, I guess, like vampires,
werewolves.
Vampires, werewolves, witches.
Well, there are practicing witches. That's a religion.
Well, you know what I mean? Okay. No. I mean, like, I think of like Salem witch trial, Hocus Pocus, I'll cast a spell on you. That, like, you know what I'm saying? Not the religion. Sorry. Do not cancel me. I'm not trying to come for anybody. I mean, do I think Hocus Pocus is a documentary? No.
Probably not.
Do I love the movie? Absolutely. And if it was, sign me up.
Love it.
Thank you.
Love.
I think it's time for us to stop now.
I think so. I think that's the end.
Don't come for me. I love everyone.
Absolutely.
And if you believe in vampires, honestly, all power to you.
Yeah, and if you do believe in vampires, can you write in and tell us why? I am a sucker for a believable story. So if you go, hey, I was out walking with my grandma and she turned into a bat and flew away, tell me about it.
I'd love to hear it.
As always, if you like the show, go ahead and like, rate, and share it with everyone. And go ahead and follow us on Twitter at @IDon'tThinkSo_EH.
Yeah, we'll see you next time.
Bye.